The lights are on, bright. It is time to dance. Welcome to the show you live for. It is Ginormous. Now, I'm a little bit amped up. It is September 21st, 2025, and I'm a little bit amped up because, for those of you who may not know, rock music, any sort of metal, is really my type of favorite music. It's really something that kind of gets me energized, really gets me going. And to have this new intro song and to kind of have it lend itself to what will make me more energetic really makes me happy. And you know what, I wanted to start this podcast and this episode off on a good note because obviously the New England Patriots, which is what we are here to talk about today, kind of left us on a sour note today. Now, I, as a fan, do not personally think after watching this game from start to finish, I do not think that the sky is falling. I think that there are a lot of things that we can look at, and I think there are a lot of things that we can be happy and be proud of. But at the end of the day, that's not what's going to come to mind. And when we look back at this game at any point in time, whether it be a month from now, a day from now, a week from now, a year from now, it doesn't matter. Everybody knows the thing they're going to be looking at are the turnovers that happened in this game. And we need to get into that and we need to talk about it because even the positive things that did happen, the negative in this game, unfortunately, really does outweigh the positives. And it's something that needs to be talked about. It needs to be addressed and fixed in order for us, as this young team that we are, that is learning, to take this next step as a franchise. So, without further ado, guys, let's get into it. Hope everyone has had a good Sunday. Hope everyone has had a good weekend. So, let's talk about it. So, number one, obviously, as I just mentioned in my intro, we have the turnovers, and we had so many of them, you would think this is a retail chain job. It was unbelievable. It was like you're watching or you're playing a video game, you're just hit sticking a rookie CPU, and they're fumbling every single time. Honestly, it was reminiscent of that. You look at the offense overall, and even though, yes, they did have some moments where they almost turned the ball over, Drake May had a couple of interceptions that could have been on the stat sheet. He had one that was on the stat sheet that, ironically enough, was not his fault because it got tipped by the defensive lineman. But Drake May overall, I think, played a little bit worse than he did against Miami, and that is to be expected. You know, Pittsburgh has always been known for their defense. It's what they're most famous for, it's what they pride themselves on. And they have one of the greatest defensive linemen in all time in TJ Watt. They have an elite one into his mid to late 30s in Casey Hayward, who, in my opinion, if he hasn't already made a Hall of Fame bid, is making it right now with his longevity. Derek Harmon, Jack Sawyer, Nick Herbig, a Badger. They literally have like Nick Herbig and TJ Watt. They call it like the Badger Squeeze or like the Badger Crush. I forget what JJ Watt called it. He's also a Badger. But they have multiple Hall of Fame level talents all over that defense. So it is to be expected that Drake May, somebody who is learning, is not going to have as good of a game as he would against the Miami Dolphins, a team that really doesn't have that much talent to speak of on the defensive end. So let me get that out of the way first. You know, I think that Drake May, all things considered, played an okay game. He definitely needs to work on his pocket awareness a little bit because that fumble, which was one of the many that we had on the day, that fumble was absolutely his fault. He tried to scramble, he tried to make the big play, he tried to do something and make something out of nothing. And sometimes as a quarterback, you just have to either throw the ball away or you have to take the sack. You just have to cut your losses. And look, those are mistakes that young quarterbacks make. I know obviously 2 weeks ago I was not so easy on Drake May as I am now, but with seeing the progress that he made last week and continuing seeing those flashes this week, I am going to hold back. I'm going to hold back a little bit on Drake May because I do not think he was the main reasoning in this loss. And I do believe if it wasn't for other factors within that offense, then we would have gotten to see more of what Drake May could have done. Obviously, Drake May himself could have squandered that opportunity, but we'll never know because the running backs for the New England Patriots, specifically Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson, fumbled for a combined 3 times between the two of them. Now, look, I'm going to give Antonio Gibson a pass. I think that last year into this year, especially last week with that game saving kick return touchdown, I think Antonio Gibson has been a very solid, steady, dependable veteran running back who can work into any rotation. And you know what? This fumble just so happened to come, in my opinion, for Antonio Gibson on a game where we had so many fumbles that it all blends in and it makes you think Antonio Gibson is worse than he is. But I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Antonio Gibson specifically on this fumble and in this game. It wasn't a good game for him. He had a couple of nice runs, but obviously it's all going to be highlighted by that fumble. I understand, and you know what? Just don't let it happen again, okay? This is his mulligan. However, who I'm not giving a mulligan, who I'm not giving the benefit of the doubt to, is Ramondre Stevenson. On this podcast, last week, 7 days ago specifically, I said I believe Ramondre Stevenson, when he does not have the fumbling issues, is one of the most talented running backs in the NFL. And although I stand by that sentiment, he makes it so difficult for me to support him because the man simply refuses to hold on to the football. Now, obviously, that's funny. I know it's not intentional. I know he's not fumbling on purpose and causing turnovers for the hell of it. But this man clearly has a fumbling issue. If we're not going to get rid of him, we need to do what Bill Belichick did with Stephen Ridley all those years back and sit him for a game. We tried doing it last year with Gerard Mayo, trying to have him be the backup and have Antonio Gibson start. And obviously, like the chicken he was, Gerard Mayo backed out and ended up starting him and just said coach's decision. But we need to do that this year. I expect Mike Vrabel and or Josh McDaniels or Robert Kraft, honestly, for that matter, because I really do think it's getting to the level where maybe Robert Kraft will have to step in. I think Ramondre Stevenson needs to be benched. I think for next game against the Carolina Panthers, who I predict will be a much easier matchup against for the New England Patriots, I think that Ramondre Stevenson needs to be benched. I think you need to give Travion Henderson and Antonio Gibson the workload. I don't know if there's somebody on the practice squad that you can call up, somebody who can kind of fill in to be that third running back for that game specifically. I think Ramondre Stevenson is not going to learn the error of his ways. He's not going to understand that he needs to hold on to the football. And these fumbling issues are going to continue unless we give him some form of punishment. I don't know if he really cares because he's getting paid anyway. I don't know if he'll resonate, but you know what? We have to do something because this cannot continue. This cannot continue from Ramondre Stevenson. Again, I am one of his biggest supporters. I think that he's one of the most talented people or running backs in the NFL when he is not having the fumbleitis and the butterfingers. But the reality is that's what he's doing and that's what it is. And for the foreseeable future, that is what it will be. And I don't know any other way to put it. I don't know how else to say it. Something needs to give. Something needs to give. We cannot continuously ask the fan base, or the Patriots cannot continuously ask the fan base for us to believe in a player who consistently, over the years, not months, not weeks, years, has given us turnover problems, been an issue for us, and been kind of a contributing factor to us having a losing culture. Turnovers lend itself to a losing culture, and we have the number one culprit at our running back one, somebody who, yes, has earned the starting spot over a second round pick, over Antonio Gibson, but at the end of the day, he still has these issues, and something needs to be done. I don't want to go on about this forever. I don't want to keep on repeating myself, but I cannot emphasize enough that if something is not done, and we just go and keep on and continue with the status quo with Ramondre Stevenson, number one, I don't know how happy you're going to be making your fan base. And number two, you're running a real risk of continuously losing games that you could be winning and shouldn't be losing because of this man being your number one running back and being at the forefront of your offense, because that's what Josh McDaniels likes to do. He likes to establish the run game and ground and pound as much as he can and make him kind of stop it. He likes being that headache for defensive coordinators, being somebody who you really have to game plan specifically for. And Ramondre Stevenson right now is not getting that done. Now, moving on, because I want to go to two negatives and then I want to go to a positive. At the end of the day, I really do like to end my podcasts and my episodes out on a positive note. I always like to try to keep things upbeat and looking forward to the next show, looking forward to the next topic. I want to talk about Demario Pop Douglas. The only thing I hope pops is his name up on the released list for the New England Patriots. That's the only thing I hope pops because Demario Douglas on 4th and 2 for us to keep on moving the chains. We're down 21-14 to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Demario Douglas catches a pass that is right at the sticks. And you know what? Granted, maybe there should have been a play call designed above the sticks. That I will grant you. I understand that it may not have been the most inspiring of play calls, but Demario Douglas catches the ball at the sticks. In my opinion, what would have more than likely been named and labeled a first down, continuously moving the chains for the New England Patriots, potentially getting us in the end zone. I Demario Douglas tries to make a move, tries to juke, runs backwards, and then gets tackled behind the line to gain, and causes a turnover on downs, which loses us the game. Everyone has a set of eyes at this point. For everybody who watches sports, listens to my show, watches the New England Patriots, and follows them consistently, it's time. Just like Ramondre Stevenson, it is time with Demario Douglas. At the end of the day, Demario Douglas was a 6th-round pick out of Liberty, who I think has shown, yes, a couple of flashes, who has been the team's leading receiver. But when you have guys like Matt Patricia, and with all due respect, great quarterback whisperer, but not a great play caller, when you have guys like Matt Patricia or Alex Van Pelt, like I said, with all due respect, guys being your offensive coordinator, obviously a lot of things are going to be dysfunctional about your team, and some things that may look good and some things that may look players look a little bit better than they are going to be happening on your team. And Demario Douglas being the leader in receiving yards for a couple of years for the New England Patriots, that is all just inflation, in my opinion. That's not something that is sustainable and lends itself to a sustainable offense in the NFL or a functional offense in the NFL. Demario Douglas cannot even be on the field during running plays because he's so bad at blocking, and he'll just get blocked and blown up every single time. So first of all, when he's on the field, people know that it's going to be a pass, okay, because he's not physical enough in the run game to even want to put his shoulder down and try to make a block, okay? So he right at then and there, him being on the field is a massive disadvantage for us. And then where's the football IQ? Where is the football IQ from Demario Douglas? That's what I want to know. And in the post-game conference, he literally just said, yeah, man, it was a play. And he started laughing. He was smiling and chuckling like it's some sort of a joke. Man, does 5 turnovers in a game look like a joke to you? Does 5 turnovers in a game and you being the reason why we don't move the sticks on 4th and 2 because you want to be all jukey and try to be Ashton Genty in college football 25 or Devin Hester or whatever insert OP player here because you want to play a video game character, we end up losing the game and the right thing doesn't happen and you want to sit there and you want to laugh? Man, look, I said for Ramondre Stevenson, it's time for him to be benched. For Demario Douglas, man, it's time to go. It's time to go. Man, we got Efton Chisholm for a reason. And look, Efton Chisholm will provide a lot of the same issues that Demario Douglas has in terms of the height. But I believe for an undrafted guy, man, Efton Chisholm is going to be a willing blocker. I think he's somebody who, even though it wasn't preseason, showed that he has the will and the will to be physical. He's somebody who wants to get in there, get his nose all grimy. He's somebody who wants to be involved in the offense, constantly learn. And man, Demario Douglas, to me, does not look like he wants that. He complained last year about targets as if he's this sort of big shit. Yeah, sorry for swearing. I'm not happy with him at all whatsoever. I think that Mike Vrabel did a fantastic job this offseason of getting rid of a lot of entitlement from last year and in years past, from Belichick specifically. But man, he did not go deep enough, and I really think he needs to go back into that well of entitlement and get rid of Demario Douglas. That right there showed me that the football IQ is not high enough and does not lend itself to winning football. And as of right now, for a young team who, yes, is going to take their lumps, I have accepted that, and this game specifically is a lump that we took. This team does not need somebody who is going to set them back because of poor football IQ. And that's what Demario Douglas is as a player, and that's what he has. Low IQ. Right now, this team cannot afford that because we are trying to build a culture. We are trying to set a standard. And if we're going to have people who try to care more about ESPN highlight reels rather than moving their ass up, getting to the end zone, and moving the chains, we can't have that, man. We can't have that. It's time to go. He did not deserve the support that he got at the sideline. Everyone patting his back. Oh, it's all right, man. All good, all good. He doesn't deserve that. He doesn't deserve that because he wasn't trying to make a winning play. He wasn't on his teammate's side. He wasn't doing what was best for the team. He was doing what was best for himself. And you're telling me with a straight face that his teammates are going to go over there and support him? That's a mistake. That's a mistake by the other Patriots teammates. That's a mistake. They should have just left him sitting there in solidarity and let him think about what he did. That's what should have happened with Demario Douglas. Whew. Sorry, I don't like getting that aggressive. I don't like getting that mean. But you know what? He deserves it, in my opinion. It is just my opinion at the end of the day. But you know what? This is my show. So, my show, my opinions. Whew. So, going on to the positive note of the New England Patriots, I thought that the defense was much improved. Yes, they gave up some third down plays. Yes, they weren't able to recover that fumble that ended up going out of bounds that really would have turned the tide. But however, I think Robert Spillane played a much better game, even though, yes, he did make some tackles or miss some tackles. At the end of the day, if what you're asking out of Robert Spillane, somebody who's a little bit slower, if you're asking for him to be in coverage, be one-on-one with a running back who's a lot niftier, he had A-Chain last week, Jaylen Warren, who isn't as fast or as nifty, but somebody who still is a very good running back, somebody who is the starting guy for a reason. You're not going to get the best play out of Robert Spillane if what you're asking from him is to be this coverage guy one-on-one with a scat back. It's just not going to be what you get, it's not going to be the best usage of Robert Spillane. And if you're going to complain that he's not doing that well then maybe utilize him a little bit more like they did in this game, which would be filling the lanes and getting in the running holes and kind of filling those clogs and gaps. That's what Robert Spillane's game is. He finally got to showcase that a little bit today. And you know what? Although he did have some bad plays in coverage, which again isn't his fault, he played a lot better. And wouldn't you know it, he got an interception. You know, when you drop him into zone coverage and kind of just let him scan the field, he's actually pretty decent at that. And he completely fooled Aaron Rodgers, the most talented quarterback in the history of this game, to making him think he was invisible. That is Robert Spillane's game. Drop him back into coverage, let him have the instincts in the middle of the field, and have him be that gap guy in the running game. That's who he is. And you know what? He played a much cleaner and better game than I think a lot of people are giving him credit for. I think he's gotten a bad rap these past couple of weeks, and I'm really happy that he got to showcase his true skills this week. And I'm all for, if we see what we saw this week out of Robert Spillane, I'm all for it, and I'm really happy for him. Our defensive line, Harold Landry has been magnificent this year. Milton Williams has really shown why he deserves that pay. He's been a disruptor in the middle of the field, allowing other guys to make plays. K'Lavon Chaisson, while he did make some positive plays, he had a nice tackle for loss and space. He needs to learn, man, how to line up behind the line of scrimmage. For God's sakes, I don't understand how you're in the NFL and you consistently make that mistake. Once, man, you can forgive it. Twice, hey, you gotta fix it. 3 times, man, at this point, you're not paying attention or you're just that undisciplined. That needs to be fixed. I think K'Lavon Chaisson is actually a decent player. He has a lot of high praise from this coaching staff. But again, you need to be more disciplined. And just overall, from a defensive perspective, while there were some penalties, Alex Austin, I think, is starting to get exposed. I really don't think he's an outside corner. We really, really could use, this is the 3rd week in a row I've said this, but we really could use Christian Gonzalez back. I know he practiced this week. He was limited. He finally was able to get out there and run. He needs that ramp-up period because he didn't have a training camp. Man, here's to hoping that Christian Gonzalez comes back quick and he really makes an impact. Carlton Davis, who I think is okay. You know, again, I don't think he's the greatest player in the world. I don't think he's a good cornerback one. I don't think that's really his strength. I think his strength as a cornerback too. Man, it's just a lot of people, especially on the defensive backs, are just out of place right now. And unfortunately, that is kind of where a lot of issues are happening in our secondary. Our pass rush has been good, but on the plays where we don't make disruption, get tackles for loss, or we get a sack, a lot of times our defensive backs are kind of getting exposed. But at the end of the day, look, we gave up 21 points, which again, you're hoping you give up a little bit less. But when you have 5 turnovers, 3 fumbles specifically, 1 turnover on downs, and 1 interception, which I don't believe was Drake Make's fault, I already said that. But given that the Patriots had 5 turnovers on offense, I think only giving up 21 points as a defensive unit is excellent. I think they were asking so much. I think the Patriots were. They were asking so much out of their defense. They were leaning on them to really make sure that they cleaned up the offensive mistakes and consistently bailed them out. And you know what? In crunch time, unfortunately, they couldn't, but they were doing it all game. The first half or the beginning, especially the first quarter, the defense didn't look like all that great, but they really set their feet down, didn't let Aaron Rodgers carve them up like they did in the beginning, and they really set the tone. They consistently forced Pittsburgh to punt, and they made plays, and they got that interception, they got sacks, they got a lot of tackles for loss. I was very impressed with the defense today, and I'm only expecting more of the same, especially up front against the Carolina Panthers next week, who, yeah, they do have some talent. They do have some flashes. They played really well at the end of last year. They just shut out the Atlanta Falcons. Who would have expected that? They made Michael Penix get benched, for God's sakes. I mean, that's not something anybody really was expecting. But at the end of the day, I'm expecting a massive improvement next week. I'm expecting a win next week from the New England Patriots. And you know what? Look, this week, it's very frustrating. It's very disheartening. But at the end of the day, we can take this loss and we can say, when we take care of the football and when we don't play stupid, we can beat teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, look, they may not be all that great. We all know how a lot of people feel about Mike Tomlin, but the Pittsburgh Steelers will always be in the playoff hunt. They'll always be in the playoff race. If not in the playoffs, they'll always be hovering around. This week was a measuring stick for a team that is always going to be hovering around the playoffs. And if it wasn't for ourselves, I wholeheartedly believe we would have won that game, and we would have won it handily. So when we have a lesser team than the Pittsburgh Steelers next week, like the Carolina Panthers, I'm fully expecting not only for us to win, but for us to clean up those mistakes, for us to make sure that people who need to be benched or released are benched and or released, and we make the plays we need to make ourselves 2-2, and continue to have ourselves at second place in the division. Because despite being 1-2, New York and Miami are both 0-3, and we are number 2 in our division right now. And I know it's early; it's only week 3. It's going to be ending after tomorrow, but to me that means something. To me that means something to be in that race with Buffalo. I think that's very important. We have home field advantage next week and then after that we're going to be on the road for a little bit. Man, so take care of business next week. Take care of business next week against Carolina. Go home with a win and make yourselves feel better. Be 500, be 2-2, and you know what? You can hit the reset and be like, look, man, we kind of got through this. We're 500 right now. We're a month through the season. Let's hit our stride. Let's hit our stride and let's win some games. I really do believe that this team is capable of doing that. I believe that this team is capable of honestly anything that they set their mind to. This was a test. And you know what? Through no fault of the Pittsburgh Steelers, we failed that test. This was a test that we didn't study for because we turned the ball over. And you know what? We failed. We failed. And you know what? A young team is going to fail. A young team is going to take their lumps. A young team is going to have games like this. Maybe this was necessary for us to learn from it. But today, you know what? It's not necessarily something that we would want to be talking about. That's really all I have today. Again, I wanted to end with a positive note, and I'll end on this note in the sentence. The defense played a lot better, and I'm expecting them to improve week by week from here on out. But yeah, again, that's really all I have for you guys today. Kansas City Chiefs just knocked off the New York Giants. It really looks like they're going to need to be changing their quarterback soon. If not to Jackson Dart, then at least Jameis Winston if you don't want to throw a dart in that limelight right away. But yeah, guys, I just wanted to say thank you. Hope everyone has had a magnificent weekend. Hope everyone's had a magnificent day. This has been Ginormous, and take care, guys. Go Pats.